As has already been mentioned, my name's Amy, I'm from Trillein. The title of our slot that we've got today is What has Renew Wales achieved to date? And I am, of course, going to give you a few facts and figures about what Renew Wales has achieved and the tangible sort of changes that have happened in communities because of the support of Renew Wales. But I'm also wanting to take this as an opportunity to try and encourage you to think about what are the possibilities. Okay, if this is what Renew Wales has achieved so far, what else could it achieve? What else could the communities that it's supporting achieve? This morning was all about solving individual problems and looking at the here and now, and this afternoon is very much more about thinking about the future. What could we do? What is possible? So a little bit of a background, just for those of you who aren't really aware of the structure of Renew Wales, it's a little bit different to normal programmes. Instead of employing project officers to go and work in specific areas of Wales, instead it provides a little bit of resource to a lot of people to go out and work direct with local communities. So the coordinator engages local groups, they work with the groups to identify what the key issues are, they then bring in the specialist support, and then the group goes off to take action. And so as evaluators, we're sort of running across the top line of that, which is around sort of engaging people in the whole idea of why you would want to collect evidence, collecting the evidence, and then seeing if there's a case for future funding. And we're at the moment in this middle phase, this collecting evidence phase. And it's also sort of parallels what's happening in Renew Wales at the moment, which is that coordinators are out there working with groups, things are starting to happen, but we're not yet quite at the end point where change has really happened. Renew Wales is initially funded through the Sustainable Steps programme. It has these kind of like core outcomes, more communities having better knowledge, skills and abilities that allow them to take action to address climate change, build resilience and live in a more sustainable way. There are more communities starting to reduce their carbon footprint and adapt to the impacts of climate change. And the learning from the programme informs future climate change and sustainable development policy and replication. And those were the aims set by Sustainable Steps. But we did a lot of work when we first started. They were saying, okay, well, realistically, are we going to see those in the initial funding, in the initial time that Renew Wales is here? And the first two, yes, we should start seeing something about that. But that third one, about influencing and looking to the future, probably we need to think about there's some steps along the way. It's a longer term outcome, influencing policy and creating change. 2 years, it's a really difficult time frame to achieve it in. So we came up with these additional outcomes that are about thinking differently, supporting those pioneers, supporting those people out there who are trying to do things a bit differently, and better connections. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about whether that's been achieved. So to start off, some facts and figures. This 113 is actually 120, I should say. So 120 projects have met. We have a central system called Basecamp, which is where I get all of my information from. So only 90 of them have so far made it onto Basecamp. A little note to coordinators there, if you want to get on Basecamp. And 79 of those have got action plans attached to them. I think the most interesting thing that comes out of this is the fact that 60% of the groups that have taken part in Renew Wales so far have not had anything to do with an environmental project before. It's not just that they're not environmental groups, they've never done anything to do with the environment. I think as a consequence of that, it's perhaps unsurprising that the thing that groups are valuing most is the technical expertise that Renew Wales is able to target onto their programme. The role that the coordinator is playing is to stimulate ideas, to make projects happen, to focus in more on the environmental ideas, connect with different agencies and help people think a bit more differently about actually how can we solve environmental problems. So across those three primary aims that we had from Sustainable Steps, we're finding a load of evidence that there's more skills and knowledge in communities. It's reaching people who otherwise wouldn't be involved in climate change projects, raising awareness in the wider community of what's going on. There's more action. We have evidence that around a third of the projects that are being supported through Renew Wales just wouldn't have happened at all had it not been for that interaction with the Renew Wales coordinator. And around the informing policy and practice and this idea of connections, I think that's part of what these sessions like these are about, or these events are about. We're just starting that process of creating those connections and to getting people linked up from different groups and different organisations. Okay, so progress. First on the supporting the pioneers. How's Renew Wales doing it? Getting to those groups that actually are trying to do something a bit different. We were really lucky this morning to hear about the Elgin launch of the share scheme there. I mean, brilliant. What a pioneering, what an interesting thing to have achieved through Renew Wales. It's the first of its kind in Wales, and it wouldn't have happened had it not been for Renew Wales. And although that's a really big and it's fancy and it's a brilliant project, we've also got pioneers on a smaller scale. So people like the Main D Action Group, they're working in Newport, and thanks to the help of the Renew Wales coordinator there, they went and set up a food bank. So the coordinator linked them up with Fair Share. They got the food coming into the centre, the church that they've got there, and they now give out food boxes to 15 to 25 people per week. Again, it wouldn't have happened had the coordinator not been there to provide the skills and expertise to link people up and to make things happen. And then we've got people like Abergavenny Energy. They've already done a relatively small energy scheme through Gwent Energy, and now they're pulling on the resources of Renew Wales to scale up, to be bigger, and to try something different. Thinking differently is a bit more subtle. But sort of the changes are a little bit more, I suppose, less grand as the pioneer projects. But we've got hundreds, literally, of examples from across Renew Wales where people are actually starting to think differently. From the coordinator who was able to support the chair of a committee to start thinking differently about photovoltaics. He'd been really risk averse, he hadn't wanted to go near it. And now thanks to a coordinator explaining everything and bringing in the right kind of support, they're having photovoltaics installed on their community roof. Getting organisations to think about marketing and business as a mechanism of exploring energy efficiency. One of the first things that appears in the EPC reports that have been generated for many of the groups is how do you use your building better? How do you get out and get more people into it? So getting people to think about marketing and business planning. Supporting community halls to think about a number of regeneration projects and then honing in and selecting one. Working with young people like the Girl Guides to set up a recycling scheme. Again, they were saying that actually this is the first project that we've done that actually does something, that is there, that lasts, is something tangible we can call on. And then again, it was mentioned this morning, the OSUM and the BYG projects, which have been about getting young people involved and interested and excited about the environment. So on to better connections. There are different kinds of connections, and Renew Wales has been really effective at developing some kinds of connections and less well good at this stage at doing others. So we've got the connections to specialists. I think this is all an area that everyone here would agree has been a really valuable part of Renew Wales, bringing in these really experienced professionals right down to community groups. So we've got things like at Higher Kinnerton, where they were used to produce a review of the building and where to prioritise people's activities. We then got connections to organisations. I think in Castle Meadows, Abergavenny, the coordinator was really effective there at connecting the council and the group up together. Cathay's Liberal Club, the coordinator again played a role in connecting to the university and other potential sources of marketing. I've touched on it already, but these connections to communities, Project Bikeability, has been encouraged to market to new people, to develop a business plan, to connect into their community and to see where they can go. And then there's this thing about better connections to each other. This is perhaps one of the areas where we're just starting to see it happen, and potentially through sessions or through these kinds of things, more of it can take place, where actually we feel more like a community of people working towards the same goal. So a few final thoughts from me in terms of what Renew Wales has achieved to date. I think it would be fair to say that it's achieved a lot in a relatively short space of time. Those of you who were at the conference last year and who saw the report that we produced in June last year would see that it was a year in, but it was just getting started. But in the time between June last year and February this year, the pace of activity has grown massively. There's loads of projects going on, loads of activity, loads of change happening on the ground. There are pros and cons associated with the model that Renew Wales does. The fact that the coordinators have a relatively small resource means that that's only part of one job that they can never be involved in. But overall, I think we'd say that it's been really effective at getting to those organisations that otherwise would be missed through having a central project officer or that kind of role. It's inevitable. Every single evaluation, or nearly every single evaluation that I write, includes some kind of line about time. Not enough time was allocated at the start to allow things to start up. But Renew Wales is working on a very tight timescale. And it really would benefit from having more time available to it, just to make things, the momentum started, the snowball started rolling, but it would just really benefit from more time to allow those connections, projects, pioneers to really kind of create a sort of an appearance in Wales or across Wales. It's not unusual to say something as well about smarter delivery. In any programme, there will always be people who are trailblazers and people who sort of fall behind a little bit. I think because of the nature and the way that Renew Wales is structured, it's really important to support those trailblazers and really make sure that resources and effort is targeted on those that actually are making the biggest difference. And then my final point is linked a bit to the second one about more time, which is that there is, in order to get this connection and network and to get people on together, kind of need more time and more opportunities to bring people together. It's really great having virtual networks, but having physical networks where we bring people together is really important.